Princess Anne is on a goodwill tour of Europe and is now in Rome, Italy. She lodges at her country's embassy in Rome. As a princess, she has to maintain an attitude and poise fit for a royal. At nighttime, from her window she sees a group of regular folks partying. As she listens to her schedule for the next day, she becomes distressed due to her tight schedule and is given a sedative to make her feel happy. That night, she leaves the embassy under the influence of the drug. Bradley is a news reporter who has just lost a gambling match. He sees Anne sleeping on the street and tries to wake her up. He tells her she is too young to be picked up by the police and assumes that she is drunk. He notes that she is educated and well dressed yet sleeping on a public street. After telling her to take a coffee, to help her sober up, he orders a taxi to leave but decides to take her along when he sees her attempting to sleep again. When he asks for her address, she gives the Colosseum and he doesn't believe her. He tries to shake her awake and asks again, but she still gives the same address. The driver tells Bradley her address is wrong. They arrive at his place and he pays his fare with extra to the taxi driver, so he can take Anne to wherever she wants. When she wakes up, the driver refuses. He tells Bradley his taxi is not for sleeping. Bradley tries to explain that she isn't his problem, as they have never met before. The driver replies that she isn't his problem either, so he will take her to the police. At his words, Bradley takes her to his apartment. Anna is still very sleepy, so he gives her a pajama. He tells her to sleep on the sofa and leaves. At the embassy they discover she is missing. Bradley returns and on seeing her on his bed, disposes her on the sofa. The next morning, he's late for work and it's past the time for his scheduled interview with Princess Anne. He goes to his workplace and meets his boss, Mr. Hennessy. When Hennessy rebukes him for his lateness, he lies that he had gone for his interview with the princess. Now, just before Bradley had come to his workplace, Hennessy had read a newspaper with headlines stating that, due to Princess Anne's illness, all her commitments for the day has been cancelled. So on hearing Bradley's lie, he plays along. Bradley tries to keep up but fails after a series of questions. Hennessy finally tells him that every interview with the princess had been cancelled. He gives Bradley the newspaper. Bradley notes that her facial features are similar to the lady, currently in his apartment. He quickly calls the caretaker of his apartment and gets confirmation that she is still there. He tells the caretaker to make sure no one goes in or out of his apartment. He then returns to Hennessy's office and makes a deal with Hennessy that he can and will give scoop on everything about the princess. Her private and secret longings, her views on everything. Hennessy is shocked and tells him it will be worth $5 grand. Hennessy bets 500 he won't be able to give such an exclusive interview. Plus the princess will be leaving Rome the next day. He returns to his apartment and the caretaker confirms in his own words that nobody is come and nobody is go. Bradley asks him if he would like to make some money. He tells him to lend him some and he will return double of it. The caretaker refuses, as Bradley still owes him 2 months' rent. Bradley, now in his apartment, compares her features with the picture on the paper. He further confirms her identity when he addresses her by her royal title and she responds despite being asleep. With his newfound information, he gently picks her from the sofa and puts her on the bed. Anne wakes up and notes she's not in her room, as well as the presence of the strange man of her last night's dream. It's awkward at first. She inquires about last night and how she came to be here. He tells her it's his apartment. He hadn't brought her in by force, as the opposite was the case. Anne suddenly grins to ease the tension and they formally introduce each other. He tells her his real name and she tells him to call her Anya. Immediately Anne learns of the time. She is in a hurry to leave, but he tells her not to be in a hurry, as there's lots of time. She disagrees. According to her, she's been a lot of trouble. He suggests she shower and runs the shower for her. He leaves the apartment and quickly calls a colleague, Irving, who is a photographer. He doesn't give him any details but tells him it's front page stuff and he needs a photographer. Bradley returns to the apartment. Anna has been waiting for him. She declines his invitation to eat, as she has no time, and declines his offer to take her to her place. She thanks him for his hospitality and letting her sleep on his bed. She asks for some money. He is quite generous and she promises to return it to him after taking his name and address. The caretaker on seeing the money exchange isn't pleased. Bradley promises to pay him the next day. Bradley follows her at a short distance, as she tours the market and gets some things. She also gets a haircut from a barber who invites her to a night dance party, which she politely declines and thanks him. At the Spanish Steps, he pretends to meet her by chance and compliments her new look. She confesses that last night, she ran away from school and will be returning now. He suggests she take the whole day to herself. She considers his suggestion and happily lists what she would like to do. He offers they do it together. He takes her to a sidewalk cafe because this is something she's wanted to do. As they discuss, she tells him her father is into public relations, and when she asks Bradley about his work, he tells her he sells fertilizer and chemicals. It's at that moment Irving arrives. Bradley introduces Irving to her and Anne gives her full name as Anya Smith. Irving nicknames her Smitty. Irving tries to state her resemblance to the princess, but Bradley stops him. Irving mistakes it to mean he isn't wanted there. He tries to leave but Bradley stops him. Anne asks Irving about his line of work. He tells her it's the same as Bradley. He tries to explain in detail but Bradley pours coffee on him. Irving isn't amused. However, Bradley tells him to be a little more careful not to spill. Irving once again tries to verbalize Anne's resemblance to the princess and Bradley pushes his chair down. Bradley takes Irving away from their table. He tells him his plans, and agrees to give him 25% of the $5,000. They return to their table and Bradley suggests they make a fun schedule for the day. They explore a lot of historically beautiful sites in Rome, while Irving secretly takes pictures of Anne. At some point, she attempts riding a bike and collides into some vendors and pedestrians. They are both taken to the police station and are later released when Bradley tells the officer they are newlyweds and also shows the police his press card. They visit the Mouth of Truth, where he tricks her into believing his hand is bitten off. At some point Irving leaves them. Anne suggests they go to San Angelo for the dance party. The same one the barber had invited her to. At the party, the Secret Service agents deployed by her country recognize her and call for backup. After their dance, Anne asks Bradley why they had spent the whole day doing things she had wanted to do. He tells her it was the simple thing to do, and she tells him she's never heard of anyone so kind and completely unselfish. They coincidentally meet Mario the barber and Anne introduces him to Bradley. He is dancing with Anne when Irving finally arrives. He wonders at who Smitty is dancing with and Bradley tells him it's the barber that had cut her hair. Irving ponders on a possible headline, The Princess and the Barber. He secretly takes a picture while they dance. The backup arrives, as her dance with Mario ends. An agent then dances with her and calls her by her title. He directs her to walk to the car but she protests and calls for Bradley. They try to fight the guards so they can escape, to the point that Anne hits an agent with a guitar. The police arrive and arrests the secret agents for causing unrest. Anne and Bradley are able to escape through the river. He asks her if she's all right. He tells her she was great back there, while she tells him he wasn't so bad himself. He kisses her and they return to his apartment to dry off. There's a broadcast on the radio regarding the princess's worsening condition but she turns it off. He tells her he would like to get himself a place with a kitchen when she reveals she can cook. He also tries to tell her the truth but she tells him to tell her nothing. She changes and directs him to her embassy. She tells him that once she steps down from the car, he should drive away and promise not to watch her, but drive away. She tells him she doesn't know how to say goodbye. Eventually, she leaves, after the kiss, but he doesn't drive away. At the embassy, her ambassador reminds her of her duties. She reprimands him that, had she not been aware of her duties, to her family and country, she would not have come back. Not tonight or ever again. The next morning, Hennessy asks Bradley about the exclusive interview of the princess. But Bradley tells him he doesn't have it. Hennessy doesn't believe him, as he has heard from his source at the embassy that the princess was actually roaming around town yesterday and, from all he has heard, it adds up. But Bradley insists he has no story. Irving arrives and is surprised but excited to see Hennessy. Bradley spills water on him and asks him to stop spilling things. He snatches the parcel from Irving. Irving again attempts to tell Hennessy. Bradley trips him and he falls. Bradley tells him to keep quiet, until he has finished his discussion with Hennessy. He makes it clear, that he thought he had a good lead, on the princess but, he was wrong because there is no story. Hennessy appoints him for another interview with the princess scheduled, for that same day. He reminds him of the $500 he owes him and Bradley tells him to deduct it from his salary. When Hennessy leaves, Bradley tells Irving that as far as he is concerned, there is no story. Irving shows him the pictures and they talk about the possible headlines for them. Irving tells Bradley he must be out of his mind and Bradley agrees he is. However, he tells Irving that he can't prevent him from selling the pictures because, he can get a good price for them. Princess Anne arrives for the interview. She is surprised to see Bradley and Irving. She takes questions from the press. When asked to give her opinion on the outlook of friendship among nations, she tells the press that she has every faith in it as, she has faith in relationships between people. Bradley from his place informs her that, speaking for his press service, her faith will not be unjustified. She replies she is glad to hear it. When asked about her tour, she tells the press that she will cherish her visit to Rome for as long as she lives. As the press take photos, she recognizes the lighter Irving had used, when she took her first cigarette. She requests to meet with the people of the press. At Irving's turn, he gives her the photos implying, he didn't sell it. She thanks him. She also shakes hands with Bradley and eventually greets everyone only at the front row. When she finally faces the press she smiles. Which seems more like a private smile with Bradley and leaves the hall, signaling the end of the interview. The press men and women leave the hall but, Bradley is the last to leave. It ends when he leaves the hall. If you enjoyed this video, click on the like button, and if you are a new viewer, do click on the subscribe button for future videos. Thank you.